So the banners actually did get revealed for Sigewinne and Furina with the 4 stars of Gaming, Rosaria, and Noelle. And they have the 5-star weapon banners as well. We've got the Silver Shower Heartstring, Sigewinne's bow, which looks really cool, but isn't good. Splendor of Tranquil Waters, Furina's signature weapon, and the 4 stars, the Lithic Blade, Lithic Blade, which is this Claymore, then Fav Lance, Fav Codex, Lion's Roar, and Sack Bow. So we'll talk about the weapons a little bit later. Let's start with the characters and the banner. So I've already gone over the 5 stars here. I don't want to rehash too much, since I've already covered that in a video talking about the value of them for your Primo Gems and how good they are and if they're account changing and all of that. Suffice to say, Sigewinne, very comfy healer, not very good. Probably would not recommend going for her unless you just really like her, because compared to the other 5-star healers, she just doesn't bring enough to the table to really warrant using so many Primo Gems to get her. Furina, one of the best characters in the game, and definitely worth going for. But is she worth going for with the 4 stars of Noelle, who everyone probably has already for free? Rosaria, who's a cryo character, who's not really... Cryo characters aren't really that useful or, that meta because freeze teams aren't super strong right now. And then Gaming, who's a 4-star that is actually pretty strong but very constellation dependent. So let's talk about them on these 2 banners. I guess we'll start with Noelle at the top here. So everyone can get Noelle as a guaranteed character in the Beginner's Wish. She can be pretty good. She's hard to build though because she's extremely stat hungry. She's very, very energy recharge hungry, and she doesn't generate any particles for herself, so that's a very big problem. However, with Furina, she becomes pretty solid, especially if you can get her C6, which is her best constellation, though that is very far down the line, and it's not worth wishing for a 4-star to try and get their constellations, especially C6, because that is... You could get 2 copies of a limited 5-star before you get a rate-up 4-star on a banner, so just keep in mind it's not going to be as easy as you think to get copies of the character you want. But... That being said, if you have a lot of Noelle constellations from something else, or if you just get a lot of Noelle constellations and manage to get her C6, and then pair her with Furina, that's actually pretty good. Furina ends up being a better support for Noelle than Goro, because the off-field damage that she has, the particles that she generates, even though it's not a lot, and the fact that she boosts the damage of everyone a lot while also stacking lots of fanfare by reducing your team's HP, and then Noelle heals it back up with her burst, actually works out really, really well. So there's actually a very good synergy between the 2. Other than that though, Noelle's not too great because otherwise you'd play Noelle with like Bennett or in like mono Geo teams, and those just aren't particularly as strong as other teams that you can make like elemental reaction teams or like more true hyper carry teams. And then we've got Rosaria. Again, cryo teams aren't really super in the meta right now. They're still very fun. Freeze is a very fun mechanic because frozen enemies don't move or don't hit you, and it can be very comfy to play. And if you're going to play a freeze team, well, who's a really good enabler for freeze is Furina, because she has a constant source of off-field hydro damage. And it may not be a lot of hydro application like Xingqiu or Yelan, but it is permanent, so you can keep it up indefinitely, and that helps freeze teams a lot. And one of the main things that freeze teams don't have, they get a lot of crit rate from the Blizzard Strayer artifact set, but they don't have a lot of access to attack buffing and damage buffing because they don't run Bennett typically. They typically want 2 cryo characters, an animo character, and a hydro character, so you don't have any room for a character like Bennett in that team. But with Furina taking the hydro character spot, you get hydro application, although slow, but it is permanent, and then you can enable freeze while getting the huge damage buff that Furina provides. So this actually makes freeze teams for someone like Rosaria, Kaya, Furina, and a healer pretty good. And then we've got Gaming. He is a pretty strong damage dealer, particularly at C6, but he is very reliant on his constellations, particularly the later ones. I wouldn't really recommend using Gaming unless he was at least C4, because he does have a lot of energy issues before then, and then his C6 makes him feel about as strong as like a 5-star character, like kind of a mid-level 5-star, so he can hit pretty hard. So that's kind of my takes on this overall. If you're wishing on this banner for Sigewinne, you're not doing it because you care about the overall value of all of the characters on the banner for your account. You're just doing it because you like the character, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going for Furina and you're particularly a newer player, the banner's not too bad. If you're a veteran player and you have C99 Noelle and you have Rosaria that you never use, and then the only character that potentially interests you is Gaming, well, this banner's not that valuable for you. But if you are a newer player and you want to try for one of the best characters in the game, if you do end up getting her, then the 4 stars actually end up being pretty good. If you don't get her though, the 4 stars on the banner are pretty bad. So this leads to a very weird situation where if you have enough primos and a guarantee to go for Furina, then I'd say this is a good banner to go for. If you don't, and you're like, well, maybe I can get a 5-star, but I'm also on my 50-50, and I don't know if I can actually get Furina, and you don't want to take the risk, it's kind of hard to recommend wishing on the banner just for the potential of getting Furina and then losing on the 4 stars. Though, in my opinion, because it's the second phase, we're going to get the live stream for 4.8 before this banner disappears, about a week and a half after the banner launches. So we will have some time to see who's coming up in the next patch. And if there's 5 stars that you want that are going to be maybe more interesting for you, or ones that you've wanted that are rerun characters, there's some rumors that Nilou is getting a rerun, that Navia could be getting a rerun, even Yelan could be getting a rerun. So, and of course we know that Emily is going to be there as well as a Dendro probably burning character based on the artifact set that came out before she was launched, or before she was just teased. So there's some characters that are being, rumored and teased that may come out in future patches that you may want a little bit more, and you may consider the 4 stars on their banners to maybe be a little bit better. But if you have a guarantee, and if maybe some of those future characters don't really interest you that much, or if you just really want Furina, I would say go for this now. But if you're unsure, it's okay to wait, because we'll have more information, and then you can make a more informed decision on whether this banner would be really good for you, or if you should wait for another patch. So a lot there, a lot to consider, but overall I think if you're a newer player, this still is quite a good banner to go for. Now let's take a look at the weapon banner. I will just say this right now, the 4 stars on here are decent. I don't think I would recommend wishing on this weapon banner at all. Number 1, it's a trap. Number 2, even if you wished on it, it's not really going to bring that much value for you. The bow that is Sigewinne's bow, her signature, it's not that good. It's good on her, it's not really good on anyone else. You could potentially use it on maybe someone like Diona. It's just like an HP stat stick, but otherwise I wouldn't recommend using it. And then Furina's signature gives her a lot of damage and stats, but it makes you build her differently. Furina needs a lot of energy recharge, particularly at C0, and if you don't want to build her with an energy recharge Sands and you want to go full damage with like an HP Sands, then you need to get your energy in other sources, and you need to run her on different teams. Otherwise you can't use her burst when you need to, and that's a really big problem because it's such a huge buff. So when going for these weapons, if you're trying to go for the 5 stars, it's actually better if you're going for Furina to give her like an energy recharge weapon like the Floufson Ferryman, which is free, or a Fav Sword, which is not free, but it's a 4-star gacha you may have that's really good on her. And so that solves a lot more of her problems than trying to get her weapon. Now the 4 stars on here are pretty decent. Sackbow is pretty good. It's not as good as Favonius Warbow, but it's not bad. Lion's Roar is okay. Fav weapons are pretty nice. Fav Codex and Fav Lance are always really good. Lithic Blade seems like it would be good because its passive allows you to get more crit rates when you have more characters from Leeway on your team, but there's not really anyone who wants that. Ideally, to get the most out of this passive, you would have a team of 4 Leeway characters, but there's not too many good teams that use all Leeway characters and have a Claymore character. I'm thinking the reason they put this here is to make some sort of bait for people who want Gaming, so they go for Gaming, they maybe get him, and then they look at this and be like, oh, this is a weapon that gives you attack and crit, and that's great for Gaming, yay! But you don't really run him with anyone, like a lot of characters from Leeway. I mean, His best team uses one, maybe two other characters from Liyue at the most, being Cloud Retainer and Xiangling, and that's pretty much it. And considering he gets a lot of crit rate from the Marushose Hunter artifact set, which is like the best 4-piece set he can run, this weapon isn't really valuable. But the Fav Lance, good on basically every spear character in the game. Sackbow is okay, not as good as Fav. Lion's Roar, good for characters who are in teams where there's a lot of Pyro or Electro. And then Fav Codex is also similar to Fav Lance, really useful on a lot of different characters. But this banner is still a trap, would not recommend going for it. Even though the 5 stars are good for their signature characters, they don't really solve the problems those characters have. They're just stat sticks. So I don't think I could recommend this. Overall, I think if you're a newer player, this is a good banner. If you're a veteran player and you missed Furina and you really want her, it's still worth going for. You may not have a lot of use for the 4 stars, though from personal experience, I enjoy playing Calming a lot. He's pretty fun, but wouldn't recommend using him before C4, ideally C6, but don't try to get him C6, you'll waste too many Primo Gems, and he's not worth C6ing just to play around with. If you just get one copy of him and play him with Furina and Bennett, then that's fine. So overall, these banners, less ideal than normal, but with a character as good as a Furina, I think that's kind of to be expected, because typically Hoyo puts better characters on banners that aren't quite as good. So typically if you see a character that doesn't sell really well, they'll put like Xingqiu and Fischl or something on like that banner. But if you want Furina, this isn't that bad. So overall, if you are going to wish for them, I wish you lots of luck. I hope you win your 50-50s. I hope that you get the characters you want early. And just don't wish on the weapon banner, and then you should be fine.